Yo everyone, before I dive into this video, I just want to say a few quick things. Firstly, I want to say a huge shout out for the amount of support you've been throwing my way recently. On Twitch, we hit a few milestones over the last couple of weeks, and I gotta say, the outpouring of support from the post-scripting community has been phenomenal. We hit 70,000 views, over 2,400 follows, over 50 subs, and an all-time viewership record of over 200 people watching during the finals of the EU ladder. Y'all the real goats out there. The support you have given me has been immense, and I want to say thank you for everything. We're also close to hitting 200 subs on the YouTube channel, so please remember to subscribe. There's a button somewhere you can click, and also hit the notification button so you can see when my videos are going live. Also, remember, drop by the Twitch. You're missing out on 90% of the content. We do giveaways, we play games, we chat, we laugh, we cry. You harass me, I throw banter back. It's a good time. Trust me, drop by the Twitch channel at twitch.tv/the_Yazoo. There it is above me somewhere. Drop by, I'd love to see you there. It's a good time. Now, a little bit about this interview with Snazzy. Originally, it was only meant to be an hour long, and he stayed for over 2 hours. So I want to say a thank you to Snazzy for taking time to answer my questions about the game, and also questions from the community that was put forward to him. I tried to have a range of questions, from things about the dev team, about being a community manager, things about the game, upcoming features, the mods, and so on. So if some parts aren't for you, that's fine. Skip through the video. There's probably going to be some information in here that'll pique your interest about Postscriptum. I'll try to set up timestamps below the channel in a pinned comment so you can quickly go to the questions with information that is most important to you. Also, I'll play the leaked armor overhaul video at the end in its entirety, with no talking, with no cams on, so you can see in greater detail what we can expect from the armor overhaul. That being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, and remember to drop by the Twitch. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay, we ready?
I think we might be ready.
All right, then I'm just going to run down the list of questions I've got for you, my dude. You've introduced yourself and who you are. Again, I appreciate you taking time to come talk to us today and talk to the community and answer questions from the community. A lot of these questions are from the community, so a lot of you guys are going to have your questions answered tonight. First thing I just want to dive into, 2020 was a funny year, and 2021 doesn't look like it's easing up anytime soon. I just want to ask, how did the lockdown affect Periscope?
Well, the lockdown itself, it affected a lot of people, and even people we've worked with both internally and externally. But given that most of our development team is situated remotely, it hasn't really affected the day-to-day operation within Periscope as a company per se, as much as it has, say, our publisher, which is Off-Road Industries, who have an office in Canada with, I think, some 25, 50 people or so. So they've been affected by the lockdowns, having to send home employees and figuring out the long-distance communication. For us, hasn't really affected us from a professional standpoint, but personally, obviously, some people are affected, some more so than others.
Okay, fair. And personally, I'm kind of, compared to some people in the industry, in the game, I'm kind of new. I've been playing Postscriptum for over a year now. I knew about it longer, but my question is, from the initial showcase Postscriptum had to the community, did you imagine Periscope and Postscriptum would come this far?
Well, so Postscriptum is a passion project, dating back more than 4 years, right? Because initially the game was not more than a mod, but when the game was not more than a mod, the deal with Off-Road Industries to allow the game to become a standalone product, I think, is what really helped make the creative vision of what we wanted to with Postscriptum to come true, right? I think one of the things that surprised everyone involved with the project is kind of the scope of the project. and the scope that Postscriptum has inevitably grown to, the initial publishing deal with Offworld was, I believe, 2 factions and 3 maps. That being the Germans and the British. With 3 maps, I believe, being Heelsum, Drill, and Arnhem. So that was kind of like the initial deal. Compare that to the game that we have today, 2 years after release, 4 years or more after development. Our first initial chapter alone is like 9 maps with 6 factions, 70 vehicles, or 70 weapons, or over 50 vehicles, right? Ranging from trucks, transports, tanks. And then each consecutive chapter bringing in another 3 maps, with Maginot closing it in on its completion and in QA testing as of February 2021, right?
Yeah.
So that overall number is now, I believe, over 100 plus firearms, 70 vehicles, 15 maps, 10 factions, all of that with the same price tag of $30 that everyone paid for when the game initially released. So, yeah, Postscriptum from our side has come a long way, and its scope is like significantly bigger than what we ever imagined it would be.
Yeah, it's safe to say that Postscriptum was definitely a success then from the initial standpoint that you had. I mean, I didn't know that was the first kind of design you had for the game, 3 maps and 2 factions, and where the game is now, that is immense. And again, like you said, for $25, I mean, that's the amount you get for that price in Postscriptum compared to other games is quite fantastic. And now we've got the modding support that adds on top of that. That is
yeah, it's not really a deal you'll see anywhere else in the game industry, especially when we're talking like AAA industry, right? All that stuff would have been segmented into like 5 or 6 different DLCs, each at their own, individual price point. So while Postscriptum is not a perfect product by any means, and we never claim it is still very good value for your money. At least that's what we think, and that's what the majority of our players think, and that's not going to change. The price tag's not going to change. We're not going to start increasing the price or.
Yo, Digby, I see you, chat. Welcome everyone in chat.
Out of the blue, right?
That is true. Well, moving on from that, then, aside from Postscriptum, if we talk about Periscope themselves, is there anything in the pipeline that the company would like to do? Maybe other projects, or is the main focus now just purely on pumping out the content for Postscriptum and carrying on expanding to that universe?
Yeah, so I think it would be a lie for us to say that we haven't made thoughts of, the future of the company and what we're going to do inevitably after Postscriptum. In the 2 years since Postscriptum launch, we've kind of brainstormed a bunch of, future content ideas, not just for PS, but also new projects. But
Digby,
Postscriptum kind of still remains our focus, at least for the foreseeable future. So we're still kind of point punctured. Our main focus kind of still points towards PS as a whole. So that really hasn't changed all that much when you look at it.
Fair. And you mentioned the focus being on Postscriptum for now. And recently, the announcement was Battle of the Bulge, Chapter 4. I want to squeeze you for a little bit more details on that. Is there anything you could share about Battle of the Bulge? Anything that hasn't been mentioned yet, maybe?
So Chapter 4, Watch Under Rhine, which is the next chapter that we started discussing late last year.
Where's my dab? I can't do the dab.
But the project itself, so we started talking about Chapter 4, I think all the way back in like just around summertime 2020. I think we started really, really coming up and really talking about what we could do for Chapter 4. But the project itself was kind of put on the shelf for a good while because we had to deal with Chapter 3 and Chapter 2 with some of the issues that they had around that time. And so that project was kind of shelved. And we wasn't sure if we wanted to, or we were in a position to do like another full chapter, considering the cost of just developing a singular chapter.
See you, Wizard.
Even a small chapter that uses a lot of the same assets over and over again is a lot of work that needs to be paid for itself off that $30 price tag that I mentioned earlier. As we obviously don't have any intention of start selling DLC or expansions on their own. So there's a lot of work involved. One of the confirmed maps for Chapter 4 was revealed late last year. The city of Foy, or
Okay.
Foy. Again, kind of an homage to the HBO miniseries we all love to hate, or hate to love, right?
Yep.
Depending on your views, of course. Either way, it's a good map for our tankers, just because it offers all of what Chapter 1 offers, which is open fields, blizzards, fog, tons of fun. But there's also, all the stuff for your infantry. You have your small cities and your forests and your skirmishes. So I feel like it's going to be a really nice map for that long range, and that blizzards and fogs they're gonna play into being able to use that to your advantage, move up or whatnot.
Okay.
And it's the only map in Chapter 4 we have an homage to that HBO miniseries. Let me point that out for anyone who's like, oh, they're gonna do another, complete chapter with Band of Brothers. No, that's absolutely not true. This is the only map that's this case, and I say that because we do actually plan more than one map. So of course we don't stop there. The next map, can't say too much about it just yet, but it focuses heavily on combined arms combat, with one of the big centerpieces of the map being an airfield on the German border.
Ooh.
So for the first time in PS, you'll get to fight on like an airport, like an airfield, German airfield, late war.
Okay, that sounds kind of cool. Yeah.
And like most of our previous chapters, every map we want to try and do something different. Make the players fight in places they haven't fought before. An airfield sounded like kind of like an awesome place to fight, since it's like it has a lot of open ground and mixed with a bunch of buildings. It has a little bit for everyone.
Yeah.
And there's no saying what we could do with an airfield map, right? There's a lot of options here.
Okay, interesting. Sticking with the Chapter 4 then, for those people kind of like me who aren't too in depth with the history of World War II, I mean, we know the basic stuff. When it comes to the Battle of the Bulge, what factions are we going to see, and what era of the war are we going to see?
So you're talking about other chapters outside of Chapter 4, right?
No, we're talking about Chapter 4 specific. Like, what factions will we see in Chapter 4, and what era of the war is it? Just for those who aren't too into the history.
So Chapter 4, Watching the Rhine, is basically the battle of the Bulge, or not specifically the Battle of the Bulge, but it's the area of Belgium and the German border in December 1944 to February 1945, which was in the dead of winter. It was one of the coldest winters in years. Foy was notorious because the 101st were kind of the 101st was kind of encircled in Bastogne, and they couldn't really go anywhere. So Chapter 4 is an interesting chapter, not just because of the Battle of the Bulge, but some of the other things that happened during that, like Operation Nordwind and whatnot, with the German counteroffensive. Yeah. It was kind of like the Germans' last attempt at trying to retake a war that was progressively faster. They were losing progressively faster, right?
Okay, fair enough. And Chapter 3, we saw some changes to the original game mode. Are we going to see some changes to Chapter 4, maybe? Some new game modes added to that as well? So, for example, we had Utah Beach in Chapter 3 that had the naval invasion. Is there going to be anything like that? A little bit different?
So Invasion was kind of... Invasion. So Invasion, as we envisioned, was kind of like the quote-unquote the historical... the historical asymmetrical gameplay version of offensive, right? It's what our original realistic offensive maps used to, or were supposed to look like when the game still hadn't released yet. We meant to have a historical and like a balanced, game mode. And so Invasion is kind of that. It's kind of like the asymmetrical balanced maps, and I'm sure we'll have some of that in Chapter 4. As for new game modes, we are playing around with a couple of ideas to really switch up the gameplay, like considerably, for the better, and focus a lot more on objective based game modes rather than capture zones. But we'll have to wait and see. it's kind of what's going to be. I think it's going to be what's going to take over from territory control. We said we were going to do territory control. We're kind of going to do territory control, but we're going to do it our way.
Okay, fair. I think that's some information we haven't heard so far. And just sticking with Chapter 4 just a little bit more, are we going to see any new weapons or tanks from that era for either faction?
Obviously the majority of Battle of the Bulge is involved, the Americans, the British, Canadians, what have you.
Canada?
But the weapons haven't really changed all that much, since Chapter 3 and Chapter 1, right? The weapons aren't really going to change all that much. We're going to see some new uniforms, obviously. We're going to see some winterized versions of our current uniforms, and we're going to see some of that. We're obviously going to see the new M4A3 76 Sherman, the HVSS, or the EZ8, as some people call it. That's obviously one new tank. But outside of that, we haven't really discussed too much as to new vehicles, potentially new assets, because we already have most of what we need, right? We have the German assets and the American and the British. But we'll see.
Okay, fair enough. I'm just going to shout out to chat for a second. I see a lot of questions in chat. I'll do my best to pick out some questions. But at the end, once I've gone through like my list, I'll open it to chat and then I'll pull more of your questions. I'll do my best. There's so many questions coming out. I'll pick them here and there. But honestly, if you've got questions, save them to the end when I can see them a bit easier. I'm sorry, chat. There's so many of you guys asking questions. I'm doing my best. Moving on from Chapter 4 then, Snazzy, and Postscriptum itself and Periscope. Is there any ideas floating around what Chapter 5 and 6 might be?
So it's fair to say that obviously we would love to do more. We would love to continue to do more. But as we kind of have our hands full with Chapter 4, with the new vehicle overhaul, with the quality of life stuff, it's still far too early to speak of what we're going to do next. One thing is for sure is that if we do continue to build more chapters, especially when I explore...
Or in half an hour.
Let me rephrase that. One thing we know for sure is that if we are to do more chapters, we want to explore new settings. We don't want to do the same old Western Front. We are going to go somewhere else. We are going to do something different. Maybe we'll return to doing some of the smaller and lesser known battles, but at least we know that if we're going to do more next time, it's basically going to be an all out. We're gonna go balls to the walls, I should say, and give it all. But in order for all that to happen and explore, explore new settings, there's a lot of things we need to figure out first. The community now has the SDK. There's some big mods coming up, and if those mods are well received, obviously those mods might make it into the game. So that kind of fulfills some of the chapters. We might take them over, whatever.
That kind of led on to what my next question was going to be. It's like now the SDK is out and we've got modders working on these upcoming expansions. I was going to ask if these mods are well received, they're optimized and they're polished, would they officially be incorporated into the game as maybe Chapter 5 and 6 themselves, or would you always keep them as like an unofficial chapter?
So the biggest problem for us is that we haven't really set up the infrastructure to support pulling games into our official game. There's a lot of hurdles to overcome, both like from a technical standpoint and the legal standpoint. But we're definitely committed to finding like good opportunities for us, but also for the modding teams out there. What form that's going to shape up to and what form it's going to be coming in is yet to be discussed, because there's a whole lot of technical stuff that needs to be sorted out first. You don't just pull a mod in and just make it official. There's a whole lot of legal proceedings, because technically the modders own their own content, and so there's a whole lot of hurdles to get over in order to even remotely make it possible. But it is something we're committed to, and it's something we'll have to wait and see. For now, modding is still kind of in its infancy, as you will. Kind of only a couple months down the line, which sounds like a lot, but it's really not. Like, we're only 2-3 months down the line, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Postscriptum started from a modding community themselves, didn't they? Periscope were I think you was a mix of, was it Project Reality, and I can't remember the other one, but you guys.
Yeah, I think it was Liberation's Highway or something like that. It was the original modding team behind Project Reality World War II or Project Reality Normandy or whatever they're called,
Yeah.
and Liberation's Highway for Squad, and yeah, so. But that's a trend, right? Modders usually become developers. That's usually how it happens. A lot of our current developers have been modders or used to be modders, and then they've since gotten experience enough to join a development company, and that's usually how most developers are introduced to the. You don't a practice like this is normally not something you get into through education. It's passion. It's a passion
Yeah.
project.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair then. I mean, takeaway then for the modders in chat is keep working on it, and who knows, maybe one day your mod might officially be incorporated into the game. So, I mean, no promises, but I mean, that's good to hear though. So, I'll pause my questions for a second and I'll look at chat. I'm giving you a couple of seconds. Post any questions and I'll throw them at Snazzy right now before I continue with my list. And I'll.
That's what they have for us.
Yeah, and I'll for those asking, I'll do one giveaway in about like half an hour, and then I'll do the one at the end of the interview as well. Anyone have some RAM?
And I'm doing my due diligence here as well, and I'm enjoying a bit of rum with you. So
I did say
we're not alone here.
Good. What rum have you got?
Captain Morgan. It's God. Especially the spiced one, the spiced gold one.
I've got some dead man fingers. I've been saving it especially for today. Digby.
I have some more expensive stuff, but I can't find it anywhere. I want to get some more quality rum, but that was the only thing I could find on kind of like a short notice. Kind of thought of the last second there.
Okay. I've got a question here from Zoid. What are your expectations from the sandbox feature? Is there anything from the sandbox that you're looking forward to?
Oh yeah, so Sandbox is, for those who don't know what Sandbox is, Sandbox is basically like, if you're familiar with Seuss, like the real time editor within a runtime game. That's kind of what we envision with Sandbox. Sandbox is kind of like our way of having a game master who can create and adjust the battlefield on the fly. This is especially prevalent to the people who do events, realism events, anything where they need to change aspects of the game, but they don't want to use the kind of like the SDK to do it. Like they need to place the placements around a specific point. There's no point in doing all of that through the editor when you do it live or even during runtime. So what our plans for it is kind of hard to say, because again, it's a very, very, very ambitious thing. Having like a live editor within Unreal Engine, not to speak of running in a multiplayer environment, that is very challenging. So there's a lot of technical hurdles to get over. So I don't want to say too much about what is going to come, because I frankly don't know. It's kind of like, it is one of those things that we keep putting on the back burner, because it's such a large project that there's just other things that keep getting in the way of it. That's why it's been promised for like two years or more, and it's still not here yet, because it's just one of those things that take an incredible amount of time to do. Just from a pure technical standpoint alone, nevertheless, actually making it work, right?
Fair. A question from DevMC. DevMC96, it's a short one. He asks, Yak Panther or Yak Tiger?
Yak Panther or Yak Tiger? As in what I prefer?
I think so, yeah.
Well, I am a sucker for very big tanks, even if they are like a technical monstrosity and a engineering disaster beyond all means. I do like the Yak Tiger just because it got a big old gun, 12.8 centimeter. That's a very big shell. That's a very, very big shell, and it's a shell you don't want to be hit by. So I think from like a fear factor alone, I love the Yak Tiger, but it's just not. There's a reason why not many of them were built. They were like technical disasters. Right? They hardly worked, and they were more or less delegated to field artillery at the end of the war. Yak Panthers were more useful in terms of they were a lot faster. They were more maneuverable. They were. So I think I'm very split, but from the pure fear factor, I like the Yak Tiger. I really do. That thing is lovely.
I mean, I think I prefer is it the Storm Tiger, where it basically fires a border size, but I don't think we're going to get that, are we?
Yeah, 380 millimeter rocket propelled grenade. It's the German way of taking an artillery platform and just making it more complicated, because why the fuck not? Why not?
Exactly.
We've already made things complicated. Why not make it worse?
Yeah. I mean, will we get the Storm Tiger? Chapter 10 maybe, Storm Tiger?
I mean... No. The problem with it is that you need to get out to reload it. You need a crane to reload it. So it can't really function in a game where we don't really have a loader. And we're never really going to have a loader per se, just because it's one of those roles that nobody wants. And I know there's people out there who says, "Oh, I want to be a loader," but no. The majority of people don't want a loader. The majority of people don't care for a loader. They're fine with their loader being automatic.
Well, last question from chat for time being then, and it'll just go back into the Yag Panther and Tiger. Is it something we might see in the game in the future? Will we see those tanks? Maybe.
I won't rule it out. I mean, they're iconic vehicles, both of them. However, their actual usability within the game is going to be very limited. Like the Yag Tiger is going to be a bunker. That's it. It's not a tank you're going to expect to go anywhere fast with, flank at all. The Yag Panther, maybe a little bit more. But yeah, there are tons of vehicles that we could add. I don't even know where to start. Not just Axis, but Allied too. Like there are vehicles out there that could be great to have in the game.
Yeah, fair. All right. Looking away from chat for a second, going back to my list, I've got some questions directly from the community at you through my Discord. And the first question is, what drove you to be the community manager?
Passion, I think. So passion for community management, or community engagement, I suppose. So as a former clan unit member and leader, with years of experience with the tactical scene, going back to like Red Orchestra, Rising Storm, Squad, I've always been kind of deeply engaged with like the tactical community. It's a group of people you won't find anywhere else in the world, or anywhere for that matter. When a game asks you to communicate and talk to you and punish you for not doing so, you get like a whole different experience and whole level of understanding and camaraderie with people, on a depth that you don't get anywhere else. So there's really nothing better than being able to like engage and talk to people who are so passionate about a game, your game, for example, and hearing stories being shared between people who are all ages, be it teens or people who are in their 60s, all of who played Scriptum for one reason or another.
Okay, fair. And what is the average day of a community manager like?
Oh, that's a long one. Do you really want me to go through that? Fine. Okay.
Just the highlights, maybe.
Yeah, we can go through it. What does a day look like for a community manager or for me? Working remotely. I work remotely, meaning I work from my own home. So you work your own hours. I like to try and be up early to ensure that I'm around when the majority of the team is around, because the majority of the team is European. And being in line of
the best,
being the line of communication between the community and our development team, kind of important for me to be around. I'm almost always needed in some capacity.
Yeah.
So I kind of start off my day, pretty relaxing, coffee, breakfast, whatnot, and people really underestimate how important it is to have a good morning routine, especially when you're in, the whole COVID situation.
Yeah, I get you.
For example, breakfast, right? It'll make or break my day. Like if I don't get breakfast, I will be terribly grumpy and I won't really get much done. It'll be terrible. So I start my day off the most productive way I can, which is using my phone.
Yeah.
No, I'm checking email, social medias, the news, kind of to be up to date on what happens. One of the big responsibilities I have is to ensure I'm informed about what goes on at all times, everywhere, not just within the gaming industry, but what happens around the world, and be informed about what trends are going up, staying up to date on what goes on around us. So after that, that's when I really get to work. I start punching out my emails, checking our internal chats, deal with DMs if I have any, small requests, questions, whatever it might be, push people one place or ask people to redirect their questions one place.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so once I've done that, I go through and I say every single channel in all of our official discords, which is in our internal channel, the playtest Discord for our community testers and QA, our official Discord channel, which includes the feedback, the bug reports, the support sections, all of that. Try to help as I go along. The modding hub. Once all of that is cleared out of the way, I start responding to whatever emails I have, whatever communication I need to have outside with anyone, whether it be off-world, because off-world is in Canada, so they're several hours behind. So usually when I wake up, it's like in the middle of the night, and they've had time to respond to something. So when I'm asleep, they'll usually respond to me. After that, I help where I can in the team, whether it be working in the editor, writing development blogs, handling social media, talking to the community. It's essentially keeping the peace.
Okay, fair.
That's what I've spent the most of my time doing. And periodically, in between all of that, I'll help QA or I'll play some post-scriptum. One of the most important things is to actually play the game. It seems, and it's one thing we've started to really encourage our developers to do is spend a little bit more time playing the game, even if it's in working hours, just so you get to grips with what the game is. Because post-scriptum is it's a game on its own, and it's kind of like a beast on its own. If you don't keep up with it, it's kind of you're not really gonna understand, especially if there's frustration somewhere. So yeah, a day for me, it's either very calm or very busy.
Fair. That leads on to one of my other questions then, is how often do not just yourself but the dev team actually play Postscriptum?
Oh, like I said, I try to play at least a couple of hours, at least in work time. We're talking work time specifically here. I try to play at least a couple of hours
Paid to play?
a week, just so I'm in the know and I'm keeping up with what happens in the game and I'm playing. So I usually hop from server to server and see how the different servers are going. Say hello to the various people, the hosters, whatnot. But the team itself, it depends on who you ask. If you ask someone like Romain, who's our CEO, he plays the game probably less than I do, just because he is the CEO. He spends his time doing everything you can imagine, filing taxes, writing paperwork, talking to our publisher, dealing with our publisher, making sure that everyone gets shit done, make sure that everything gets done within the company. But yeah, we try and encourage a lot of our developers more to play the game more, just so they stay involved.
I mean, yeah, that's a good thing. Well, on with that then, I would ask what your favorite role is or kit within the game is.
Ooh, I'm very much a tanker, as I outlined, that I really like the Yak Tiger, or I like tanks in general. I kind of live and breathe tanker life, which is why I'm especially excited for the new vehicle overhaul and the armor reworks. I am very much a tanker, if anything.
Fair enough. We'll move away from you then for a second and go back to questions directed at the game again. My list has just died on me. Give me a second. In fact, I'll open it to chat. Chat, you've been patient again. Chat, throw some questions and I'll randomly pick some of your questions again.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Here you go, chat. Because my list has frozen me. Because Windows 10 is amazing.
It's a very big list of questions.
It is. I put together 30 questions, chat. So don't worry, we're not going anywhere. one question. I don't know how to pronounce this. I believe it's the American light tank, the Chaffee. Is that going to be coming back?
Yeah. So the M24 Chaffee was initially developed during Chapter 3, and at some point in development, we realized that the Chaffee didn't see service at all during Chapter 3, and so we didn't really know what to do with it. We were like, well, we can't just remove it because we've spent weeks, months making it. So we can't just remove it, but we can't put it in the levels either because people will complain about a vehicle that shouldn't be there being there. So I think what we ended up saying is that we want to relegate it to armored mode
soon, Wizard.
And in Chapter 4, it'll obviously come back because it was in service.
You don't have to be here, Wizard. Don't worry. I'll announce the winner from Discord.
So that's I think that might actually have been helped us sway a little bit more about where to put Chapter 4. It's actually the fact that we had some assets we didn't really know what to do with. So
fair. What's this? Big Roberts 101 is asking when the third French map, Maginot, I assume was the name, I believe.
Yeah.
When will that be coming out?
Yeah. So yeah, Maginot is a bit of a controversial topic because it's one of those maps that we kept delaying over and over and over again. We delayed it when Chapter 2 released. Then we delayed it again, and we delayed it again. We showed it off for the first time in July 2020, and then we showed it off again in October. And as of January 2021, the map has started into what we call the QA testing phase, which is where the QA testers are spending their time walking the map, testing the map, making sure that vehicles can drive over bridges, making sure that vehicles are able to traverse the terrain, making sure that there's no big glitches with the terrain, like you don't fall through the level anywhere. And then we do the gameplay stuff afterwards, where we play the level, we play the different objectives, we see how they play for each team, and then adjust the level accordingly. So chapter the third map is probably going to be coming, I think, within a couple of months, within a month, okay. maybe two. It's currently in the QA testing, so it's hard to say how many changes we need to make. But it's the map as a map, it's finished. Now it's just all the polishing that needs to be done and balancing.
Fair. So it just depends how long it takes for you to find bugs and optimize it. That's fair to say.
Basically.
Okay. The last question I'll take from chat for time being, I think it was from Digby, and he let me just scroll back up to see it.
Yeah.
Digby asks, what's your biggest regret that has developed in the game so far, if you have one?
My biggest regret, or the biggest regret from the team?
Let's say both.
Okay, so I think from the team, I think the biggest problem we have is the vehicle system. Arguably, the vehicle system in Scriptum is probably our biggest. It's the biggest pain in the ass we've ever dealt with as a development studio. That's because you gotta to understand this, we have to look back. When Scriptum was initially developed, we were using what was essentially an alpha version of Squad, and we've essentially just built on top of that, and we've kept building and building and building and building and building, trying to hack in our armored system. And it's come to the point now where every time we try and fix one thing, it breaks something completely different, because there's so many people who's worked on it over a course of essentially 4 years that there's just so many problems with it, which is why we're doing the vehicle overhaul, because there's just so many problems with it. There's so many places where it falls flat, it just doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, I think both from the team and my own perspective, I think that's probably one of the biggest letdowns is the vehicle system. It lets down everything else when it doesn't work. And that includes towing. And towing specifically is like a whole problem on its own.
Fair. And, well, that leads on to the questions that I want to get back to from my list then. And it was, can you give us any more details on what we can expect from the armor overhaul and when it might come to the game?
Yeah, so the armor overhaul is almost a complete rework of the entire vehicle system alike. Not just the tanks, but the entire vehicle system. And I've actually sent you a video that I think we should play in the background and let it play on a loop maybe.
I can play that now. Yeah.
I think we should play that while we sit here and talk. Put it on a loop and just have it play there in the background so people can see what the new shell system will look like. And just to kind of preface what's happening here on screen, you can see the lines, which essentially tells you where's the projectile going. You can see the small little fragment lines, which are essentially like piece of fragments from the armor that it penetrates. The big round radial is an explosive. It's essentially like a damage ring that tells us how much damage you take. And different rounds will work different ways. One of the most exciting parts about change for the armor is the shell system and how shells interact with armor in the game. One thing we want to simulate is the difference between a solid AP shot and AP shells with high explosive fillers in them. This is now fully simulated within Scriptum in the new armor system. And for those who don't know, an AP shell, a straight AP shell, is essentially just a big lump of metal. It will travel into a tank, and if it can, it'll continue going out through the other side. An APHE shell has a fuse timer, which essentially means that once it hits and penetrates the armor, it'll explode within the tank, sending fragments all over the place. You can actually see this on the next shot here. With the APHE bouncing, you see how the fragments go absolutely everywhere once it pens the first piece of armor. And this will work on armor. It'll work on buildings. It'll work on whatever. So you could shoot into a building and absolutely evaporate anyone inside the room and shell them with fragments. Because Scriptum is not a tank simulator, we're not taking the simulation to a one-to-one scale. So there is still, kind of like random chance. We're still kind of gamifying the system just to make it a little bit more fair and giving a more even playing field. But the rules of engagement will be a lot more dynamic. Usually how it goes is that the first tank to fire a shot is usually the one that wins the engagement. And that's why we kind of prepared this little showcase, the work in progress that we made on the penetration system. Keep in mind, it's not done yet. So this is just how it is now and what we've done so far. It shows how different shells act, when they hit armor. How shells act when they hit armor inside, as well as how fragments bounce around the interior. And they'll hit you, they'll hurt you, they'll set fire to the tank, they'll do a whole bunch of things. And yeah, the shell won't stop existing now until it exits the level or travels unrealistically far. So you could bounce off the front plate of, say, a Painter and have the Shan land somewhere else in the world. If you're really unlucky and have really, really bad RNG, you could get hit by it driving your Logi out of main base.
I mean,
it's not impossible.
To me, it looks amazing, and what you're saying sounds amazing. Let me just get this straight. So I could shoot at one tank, the shell could bounce off and hit another tank and kill that other tank.
And pen and kill that other tank. You can see it in one of the shots where you see it around. The AP shot, it bounces off the side of the M4A3 Sherman. It pens the rear of the engine block on the back.
Appreciate
and realistically, that fragment that a shell that engine would have caught, that shell, it would have damaged the engine, the fuel tank, and the shell would have stopped there. But since they kind of tank the empty, you can see how they kind of bounce around the interior.
Yeah.
Until they come to a stop.
And you say this is all vehicles. This new system is going to work on all vehicles. It's not just tanks. We're going to have similar mechanics for everything.
Not just tanks. Obviously, tanks are the most complex because they will have you won't see like the lights and the fragments. They're obviously only there for debugging purposes. So you won't see a lot of what's happening inside the tank. But this is just to visualize you that there are things happening inside the tank, even if you don't see them at all ever, because you won't see those fragments fly around inside your tank. But just to show you what will happen once it hits your tank, what the fragments will do within the tank. They'll just kind of go around everywhere. And they have a chance of, damaging components and damaging players and tank crews and especially tank crews. Like APHE will probably be the most dangerous thing you'll ever face as a tanker, because it's that one thing that can have a chance to absolutely decimate like an entire crew.
Yeah.
Just make you pace inside a tank.
So,
and again, all of it relies on random chance, right? We still rely on random chance just because we have to gamify it for gameplay purposes. This is not a simulator at any means, and it should never be taken as such. We're doing our best to simulate the most accurate tank gameplay we can with what we have.
Yeah.
And I think this system shows up perfectly how good we nailed it. And this is only the shell stuff. We haven't even talked about the vehicle handling, how vehicles will act differently on different terrain, how all of this will function within the game. And that is still to come.
Fair. I've got one question on this before I ask chat questions as well. So you mentioned APHE. So we're going to get different types of ammo use. Is there a list of type of shells we're going to get at the moment? Can you ring them off the top of your head?
We've always had different shell types. We've had, AP, APC, APC-BC, APCR, you had APDS and whatnot. But they've all functioned the same. They've all essentially just been like a straight AP shot. They've all kind of done the same thing. Now, shells will do different things depending on what type of shell it is. For example, the Tiger, just to take an example, because it has a bit of a diverse loadout, the Tiger has, an APCR shot, which is essentially like a high velocity shell. It's very good at penetrating armor, but it's what we call subcaliber, right? And it tends to drop speed fast over distance and drop penetration fast over distance. It has no high explosive filler, meaning that it's likely to go in through one side of the tank and out through the other. It won't do a whole lot of damage. It's very likely to bounce on armor. It doesn't take much to deflect even an 88mm round. There's AP shells, which are obviously just a pure block of metal. And once that hits the tank, it'll go in, it'll fall around inside the tank, and probably pass out the other side of the tank. Then you have your APHE, which is essentially like the same thing, but it has an explosive filler within it. So that triggers once it hits a certain thickness of armor. And once it pens the armor, it'll go a certain distance into the tank, and then it'll explode and fragment into tiny, like a hand grenade. It's like throwing a hand grenade inside a tank.
Okay.
That's just much bigger.
I said I'd hand it over to chat, but I've just got one question. Does that mean using the right tank and the right ammo type, if the tanks lined up, could I kill 2 tanks with 1 shot?
Assuming that you're firing like a, for example, if you're firing the Firefly's APCR or APC-BC shell, very likely that shell will go, if there's obviously nothing in the way, like an ammo rack or something to slow it down enough to stop it from going out the other end, it'll go through one tank, go out through the other, enter the other tank. And the best part is that we've added a slight deviation to the round. So when a round hits something at an angle or something, it'll deviate slightly from its path. So if you were to angle a Panzer IV with the side skirts on, and you shoot a shell at it, it may go through the outer skirts on the tank, but then it might have deviated the shell enough to where it will ricochet on the inner plate, or slowed it just enough to where it'll bounce. So stuff like that will affect how shells function. The same with internal walls. You'll have internal walls like the Sherman here. It has a wall separating the engine block from the crew, which means that if you shoot the rear side of a Sherman, it'll stop the shell. Okay. The fragments won't go through the plate. They'll stop and be contained to the engine block.
Fair enough then. I think this has got chat excited a little bit, so I'm gonna let chat ask a few questions now. So chat,
there's a lot to say, yeah.
Put your questions in chat. This is a lot to say. There's a lot going on here.
There's a lot of stuff here to cover, and we have an entire like 10, 12 page document just detailing everything we want to do with the armor system. What we need to do, what each round does, how each fragment is going to function within the armor. So there's a lot here to take in, and there's a lot of underlying mechanics that's going to be very exciting to show off when we're ready.
Yeah. This is a question from Lenny Go. It's quite a long one. He asks, with the new changes to the tank combat, does that mean ambush tactics will become more successful? Such as the Stug in a bush shooting at a Firefly, it will turn around and shoot me in a tank. I assume before. So I assume he's asking, will things like a Stug be more reliable?
Well, we'll take that situation, yeah. So assuming you have a Stug position in an ambush position with a side shot on a Firefly, and you're firing, let's say you're firing an APHE, an AP shell with HE failure, it enters the square side of the tank, goes through the armor rack on the side of the tank. The Firefly has a full ammo rack. That ammo rack will have a very high percentage chance of just going off and blowing up the tank in that first shot, like it always has. But then the shell will continue, and it'll explode and fragment inside the tank. And all those little fragments, each one of them, will go around the tank. They'll hit the crew. There'll be a chance that they'll hurt the crew. There'll chance that they'll kill the crew. There's a chance that they'll set the tank on fire, damage an ammo rack, hurt the transmission, whatever, hurt the gun breach, or heck, if you're a good shot, maybe you can even shoot out the cannon barrel.
Wow, fair.
But this is a lot. This is a lot, and it's way too early to talk too much about how it will function within the game. But yeah, like I said when I started talking about it, the tank that fires first is usually the one that wins the engage.
Yeah.
Usually.
So this question is said in multiple ways from different people, and it's talking about the tank engines, the tracks, and the sights. They're asking, will there be any advancements on the gears? How will the engines work? And will it be possible for infantry to detract tanks, for example?
So detracking is a thing, and it's a thing we're as part of the engine overhaul and the vehicle overhaul, we're hoping to change how the components work so that you can shoot off a track with, for example, an anti-tank gun or an anti-tank rifle, and the crew will have to hop out and actually repair the track. That gives you a fighting chance against a Charby 1, which is going to be still a very strong tank. Even in the new system, that tank will still be near imperviable or near impossible to kill with an anti-tank rifle. But if you can track it and force the crew to get out in a position where they don't want to, that's an easy dead tank. That's a tank that's as good as dead. If it can't maneuver anywhere, if it can't go anywhere, that's as good as dead. So while it's too early to say how tanks will work and how all these systems will integrate with each other, it's a little early to say. The system is still heavily work in progress, and it's by no means ready.
Is that when it comes? Is that the same when it comes to gears as well for the driver? Will they get manual gears, or is that still too early to say?
Yeah, we plan to do manual gears, so that you could traverse at whatever pace you want. And we're working heavily on the physics side, so making sure that the tanks feel heavy and they feel like tanks should. It's something that occupies a lot of time right now. So, but again, a lot of this is a little early to say about how everything will function. But you can expect that we'll do more dev blogs and more updates once we have something ready.
Fair. Again, this is the next question has been asked by multiple people in different ways, and it's talking about how infantry will work with tanks. So, how are the mines going to work, and how is the AT things like bazookas going to work with this new system?
Ideally, heat rounds will work as they should. Like a heat round will spray essentially a whole hot molten core through the tank, possibly detonating ammo rack. If it hits an ammo rack, set the tank on fire, do all these things. As for mines, that's still to be determined. Mines are very overpowered in Post-Scriptum as a whole right now.
Yes.
And, they were not nearly as effective.
Suicide logic, get out.
Claim to be. At least they're not as effective as or they're too effective in game that they should be. But you'll be damn sure if you run over a mine, you will feel it, and you will lose one or both your track, and you won't go anywhere anytime soon.
Fair. I'm getting asked, will SPGs be added after the Armory work? I don't know what SPGs are, so.
If I know who asked the question, then no SPGs. Well, SPGs, when they say SPG, they mean artillery pieces, like the Bison or big vehicles that can fire, that can lob artillery shells, kind of like the Stormbringer.
Like artillery.
But no, we're not. We don't plan any of that.
Self-propelled gun. That's what it means, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Those don't really make sense within Post-Scriptum.
Okay, you military nerds in chat. All these military nerds in chat, man. Come on, I'm just a gamer. Let me grab one more question about the tank system.
Yeah, and we'll move on.
When it comes to the weight of tanks and vehicles in general, is that going to be altered? So, for example, I mean, I've got a clip where I push over a Firefly using a Willis Jeep. Are we going to see some change when it comes to weight?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that ties into the whole, we want to make tanks feel like tank. You shouldn't be able to push a tank over with a Kugelwagen.
I'm going to leave this
if
playing,
anything,
chat, this video. I'll leave this playing.
But that's, again, too early to say. But yeah, we plan to change how vehicles interact with each other to make sure you can't do some really silly things like pushing over a Sherman with a Kugelwagen.
I mean, you say that's a silly tactic, but that won me a game. So, you know, you just got to think.
Yeah, but but it's also unrealistic. It's the same as complaining about it's the same as, it's kind of hypocritical because it's the same as complaining about the Logi AT mine meta, and then be like, oh, but it won us the game, right?
True.
So,
all right, moving on from that then. A question that I've seen asked a few times in chat, and it's one that I've had wrote down, is when it comes to the vehicle overhaul, are we going to see towing return with that?
Yeah, we know towing is an incredibly important part of the original gameplay, and this is something we'll investigate once we have, the underlying handling system in place first. We can't start adding towing and confirming towing until we've actually done all the handling and physics of vehicles. One of the big reasons why we disabled is simply the big problem with towing is that while on the surface it didn't look like there was anything wrong with it, it was a system introduced 3 or 4 years ago, in what we now consider a legacy vehicle system that hasn't really seen an update since then. So trailers don't function how they should be. There's no friction between the trailers and the terrain. They just kind of flop around because they're just kind of hinged to the vehicle in the back. But they cost some physics, and physics is the physics engine that kind of runs a lot of most games run physics in some degree, and it causes physics to become incredibly unstable, and it makes weird things happen. Desync happens. Server performance suffers. Server performance goes down. You see stutter and performance issues, and a lot of that is caused by the towing system itself.
Okay, you boys.
Just because it wasn't built to work like that. It was not, you're not meant to do that. Not with the system that we inherited.
Fair. I'm going to take it back to you personally now, and it's a question about the Shifting Sands, Chapter Mercury, and Bloody Fall. For those people in chat who don't know, these are 3 big upcoming mods to the game. I'm going to ask you which one you're personally excited for.
You're putting me on the spot, are you?
Yes.
Well, I love all the settings. But if you're forcing my hand to choose between one, which one I think that excites me the most? Mercury. I think Chapter Mercury is the one that excites me probably the most. Creed is like a severely underrated part of history. And so I'm glad that someone took it upon themselves to do it. And hey, it has paratroopers, right? I mean, German paratroopers? How cool is that? Actual paratroopers.
That's just so pretty fucking cool.
I think that's awesome. And the gliders, I've seen some of the glider stuff that they've done. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I love it. So I think I think
these questions
they're all good. They're all cool, Chapter Mercury, Shifting Sands, the Pacific Bloody Fall, whatever. They're all great projects. They all have immense potential.
Do we have any of the mods in chat for these?
If I had to pick one else, that's going to be the one.
For any of the 3 mods, do we have any of them in chat who can post a link? All right, one last question for you personally before I do the first giveaway is, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 1 duck-sized horse?
Well, obviously, I don't fight the ducks. I gain their trust and inevitably become their leader.
True.
Who do you think I am? I have the quacking. I am the quacking. I am meant to lead them. I will lead them to battle. I don't need to fight them.
Fair. I'm just going to do the first giveaway then, Snazzy. Feel free to pour yourself another drink. I'll be like 1 minute while I do this.
Yeah, so how old the left?
So Mr. Yellow's question was, Actually, this was my next question as well, and it was, why do some layers have one logi truck and others have two?
This is about the balancing, right?
Yeah, it's about the overall balancing. Yeah.
Yeah, why it's kind of off balance like that. Well, so usually we balance maps case by case and layers case by case. So it's usually based on how easy or difficult a map is to advance on. Like for example, drill with the river crossing,
I
you'll
see,
often
Piano.
find that
I'll
the
get there.
defenders will have one logi, just to give the attackers a slight advantage. Just so they, because it's such a hard map to take, that just to give them a reasonable fighting chance, we've balanced it out like that. So when we decide why does one team have a logistics truck, only one, and why does another have two, it's based on the layer and how well balanced the layer is. You'll find like a layer of drill, for example, where both teams have two logis, and then you'll find others where they only have one logi. And that's based on that specific layer. So it's layer by layer.
Okay. Fair. Moving on with my next question then, and it comes to the suppression. A couple of people asked this in my Discord, and it's been a discussion in the community recently, and it's how suppression works. How did the suppression system come about in the design process, and will it be altered in the future, or is the team happy as it is?
Yeah, so our suppression system is mostly inherited from squad, obviously. So we made some changes to make it a little bit harsher and changed it ever so slightly. The importance of fire maneuver is still kind of the name of the game, even during World War II. Even today, in some capacity, it's fire maneuver. That's the name of the game. If the enemy cannot engage back, they're also limited in options. So the suppression system as it is now came about, essentially from squad, and then we've tweaked it to make sure that it's much harsher. So the effect that a bolt action has is much more pronounced than, because obviously the suppression you have in squad is also there's also the fact that you have a 40 round magazine on semi and fully automatic. You don't have that in World War II. So to make the suppression a little bit harsher, we've done it in such a way so that your aim gets kind of kicked about, and you feel like you can't engage back effectively. And that's the idea. It's meant to be like that. It's meant to be so that you have a hard time engaging back with someone. Even if they're firing a 40 millimeter, or not 40 millimeter, but even if you're firing like a 9 millimeter, like the MP40 or the Sten gun, right? I don't care what you say. I will still duck my head down if someone is spraying their MP40 at me or their Sten gun at me wildly. I'm not gonna take a bullet, regardless if it's a pistol caliber. I don't care. So we felt that it doesn't matter what caliber you're firing. It really shouldn't matter. Any fire is gonna want to make you get down. That the automatic just have the benefit of they can dump a bunch of rounds at you, and that means that you can approach some of these weapons like the Sten gun and the MP40. The name of the game with that is suppression.
Yeah.
The MP40 and the Sten are no sniper rifles. They won't kill anyone at a distance. That's where you have your riflemen. That's where you have your marksman stuff. But they're great at keeping someone's head down. They're great at keeping people from not going around too much and getting them down somewhere.
I think it's not a question that I planned out, but off the top of my head, I can't imagine how hard it is for a development team as well in an FPS to simulate the preservation of life and the fear of death.
The fear of death. It's incredibly difficult, and we've tried and changed the system over the year. We tried to make the suppression much harsher by making the distance much higher, but those had some unintended side effects, like you would get suppressed on the other side of the building. So the system as it is now, if a bullet is, I think it's 3 meters or something like that, it'll suppress you to a degree. And the more fire you have, the more suppression you'll feel, and the more your aim is going to be all wonky. And it also has the downside of it'll drain your stamina. So if you're crawling around while you're being suppressed, you are draining your stamina fast, really fast. So when you get suppressed, and that's the intended design there is to stop people from just going prone and just crawling away fast. The idea is to make you feel like, or at least the idea is to make it feel like you are out of options. Once you are pinned down like that, you are really out of options. If you're stuck behind a bush or behind a little hill in the middle of a field and you're being suppressed, and your only option is to crawl away, you're going to take a long time to crawl away, or the enemy is going to be on you before you can crawl away from them. So we constantly update and change the suppression to do how we want it to do, or make it do what we want it to do. And we feel like where it is now is in a really good place where it really punishes you for not firing and just running around hiding. It also stops people from, for the most part, it stops that no one-man army where you run around with say
they did Galacto. He's only worth 2 tickets
now. Run around with an MP40 because you can suppress someone, but at some point you're going to run out of ammo. At some point, that 9mm is not gonna keep you alive if you have an entire enemy squad opposing you. And once they start laying down the suppressive fire, you're gonna get down.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, moving away from the suppression then, and it's just a quick question really, and it comes to the server listings for when we go to pick a server. Can we please get favorite server? So we can put a little heart next to a server, so boom, there it is, right at the top. Please.
It's on our list of what we want, what we call the quality of life list. And there's obviously more important priorities for us that needs to be done first. So
6J, so
we have a bunch of ideas like that we want to do, but they'll take time. We're not a AAA company. We're not a AAA industry. Game development studio. We have only so many people, and they need to be doing different things at all times, right? We have level designers and coders who are doing the very specific. They're doing the most important things. Our level designers are chopping hard at Maginal, making sure that Maginal is ready as soon as we can, right? They don't have time currently to do other things, so they're kind of bogged down with stuff similar to our coders. Our coders are bogged down doing quality of life fixes and the vehicle system, both of which eat up like almost all the time. So it returns to the whole, priorities is kind of like the name of the game here.
Fair enough. I'm going to grab one question from chat so quickly, and they mentioned about the player limit. Is there a possibility in the future that we will go to 50 versus 50?
Possibly. If we can get the game to a state where it's stable enough. The big challenge for us is to ensuring that the game, from not just a graphical and a performance standpoint, remain consistent across the board, but that all the servers are equally on board and that their performance is not affected when we increase the player count to 100 players. And while 20 players may not seem like much, 20 players when you already have 80 players networked around the place, that is a lot. And each player you add is going to adversely affect your performance. It's going to adversely affect the server's performance, and all that needs to tie together in order for it to work. And with the new vehicle system, especially, we need to see how that performs before we can even start thinking about whether or not it'll work with 100 players. So it's still on our list of things we want to do, but it's so low on the priorities list right now that it's not even worth considering.
I just have one quick question. It's not real. Well, it is related to you. Someone's asking, can I post this video so people can download it from my Discord? Is that okay with you?
We'll share it in a dev blog probably later next week. Yeah. So there will be a chance to see the clip again once we're done and once we're ready to show it show it off. And we'll add some more context to what you're seeing, so it's not just us here talking. I just thought this would be a great time to tie it into some of the overhaul questions.
That's
show off what's been done up to this point. So,
you know what you could do, chat? You can clip it and share it. There you go. Boom. Problem solved. Moving on to the next thing then. Let me just read this one out because it's a long one. Oh, so we're going to get a vehicle overhaul. But when it comes to the maps themselves, especially Chapter 1, are we going to see a graphical overhaul to the maps maybe at some point?
I feel like we have to define that question a little bit better than that. When you say graphical overhaul, do you mean level design, like more lived out buildings, more detail?
Yeah,
Or we're talking like terrain and
maybe a bit of both. So, like, Chapter 3 maps, they have the interiors of the buildings and maybe a bit more foliage. Would we see that for Chapter 1?
so understandably, we know that some would want an overhaul of our old Chapter 1 maps, especially considering they
Yo,
fall
Jake,
so
thank you for
short in
giving that sub,
comparison
man.
to the newer maps for presentation. But this is something we need to approach very carefully, because an overhaul may mean increased hardware requirements.
True.
Some of our Chapter 1 maps are bigger than the smaller, more detailed maps that Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 offers. Again, we're sacrificing size for detail, right? It's a trade-off. You cannot have size and detail. You can't have both. It's a trade-off somewhere, and there's compromises to be made. Dinant was a great example of this. It had a lot of fidelity, a lot of really beautiful scenery, but it ran absolutely abhorrent. Carrington is the same. They ran abhorrently because there was just too much going on at any given time. So yeah, and there's also a lot of work involved for level designers. So like we said last time, someone asked about updated Chapter 1 maps. We don't want to commit to it, at least not for the time being, because in level design alone, we're talking about having a level designer go over the entire map and making it for you.
16 times the detail.
That's a lot of work. That is like not just a small significant amount of work. That is like
I get
a ton
that.
of work.
I get
and
that.
The people here who's modders, who's been doing overhauls or doing improved version of Bulwark or whatever, they know just how much time it takes just to like improve the map slightly. So we'd had to go back and do that with all of our Chapter 1 maps. That's a lot of work. Not something we can just up and do.
I guess that
maybe
makes
maybe
sense.
once we're done with doing the new map.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. You got to balance performance, because it's easy for someone like me who runs a high-end piece, in fact 2 PCs at the same time. I can run max, no issues, but then you got to think about the people who mid-range, low-end,
who don't have high-end graphical hardware. And I think that's the problem that a lot of people seem to have a hard time comprehending and seem to have a hard time kind of understanding is why would you downgrade a map like Carrington? When we did the performance update, all we did was really just scale down stuff, remove assets here and there, and cut down on rendering. But unfortunately, that's the point we're at of what we could do is shorten the distance at which things appear so that people can actually play the map at a reasonable performance. And it worked. It massively improved performance across the board. It also improved gameplay ever so slightly that we closed off selective buildings here and there to funnel the gameplay a little bit more than normal. So it's incredibly difficult to balance a map performance wise, because the problem is with Scriptum is what's taken down to performance isn't really what you're seeing on screen. That's not where the performance kind of goes away. It's all the underlying game stuff, all the logic and all the code that runs in the background. Because you gotta remember, Scriptum is not built on just Unreal Engine. It's built on Unreal Engine, but it's built on an Unreal Engine version of Squad, the OWR core. So Scriptum is built on top of another game. It's still, in some people's eyes, a mod. It's still built on someone else's product. So we have to contain ourselves and limit ourselves to tools that we have available.
Fair.
And that could be incredibly difficult.
Fair. I've got one more question before I'll open it up to chat again, and it's about the one setting some people probably don't know about is that servers can run a tournament setting where it limits certain graphical options to put everyone on a fair playing field when it comes to graphics. Is there going to be any expansion on the tournament settings, such as it locks certain vehicle decks to make it maybe balanced when it comes to vehicles, when it comes to those who do play in the tournament setting?
So the tournament mode and the tournament settings are exclusively graphical. They're not they don't extend into game logic, and it's incredibly difficult to have it extend into game logic. Um, so the tournament mode isn't the tournament. You gotta remember when you switch on tournament mode, nothing fundamentally changes about how the server works, or how the server changes, or how the map runs. The only thing it changes is putting restrictions on what kind of hardware you can, or what kind of settings you can play the game with. That's really all it does.
Yeah.
So tournament mode itself isn't really inherently something to do with game balance. It's something to do with locking down the graphical side of the game to make sure that everyone's playing on the same hardware. And obviously that's important for a competitive experience, that everyone plays the same, that nobody's exploiting the system by lowering their graphics below what they should. And we work with our QA and our community to find and stop like intentional exploitation of our graphic settings, the INI files, to get an advantage. But we still need to ensure that as many people can play the game as possible. This is also why we haven't done a lot of the suggestions people have made with graphics is increase the quality and increase all this and that, because we still have to ensure that Scriptum can be played for as many people as humanly possible, while remaining somewhat, beautiful.
Yeah,
and we know there's a lot of people in the community, not just like random people, but people who are longtime players who do this. They do lower their graphic settings to get an advantage, and we know it happens. We know people use the INI files to exploit, and that will be over come next quality of life patch. We will be starting to restrict what you can and can't change graphically in the config files. So you can't do this anymore, like turning off the fog or whatever.
Fair. I'll open it up to chat then for a second. Chat, throw some questions at me again, and we'll get them to Snazzy. Now it's your time to answer a few questions as well. Go, chat, go. Also, Jake, thank you for the sub. Everyone who's
just to clarify that INI config thing.
Yeah.
That only means lowering the values below a value that we've determined. So we determine like a value that needs to be at. For example, fog. It can either be on or off. We will say that it's always got to be on, no matter what, because you can't turn it off inside the game. There's no way to turn it off inside the game.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
For the people who use the INIs to make their game prettier, longer render distances won't affect them at all.
There you go, chat. There you go. How will the armor overall affect?
To clarify.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because we did have someone just ask that quickly. So MateJ_F40 asks, how will the vehicle repair mechanics work with the armor overhaul?
The idea for that system is quite similar to how it is now. You still have your wrench, but the repair time will be a lot longer. The more damage modules, the longer it will take for you to repair. It's kind of the same way, but I think we've said that tracks should take you about 30 seconds to repair.
Yellow, we did.
Per track. Obviously faster if you have multiple crew members out of the tank. But if you have an engine, it'll be another value, and they'll stack. So the more stuff is broken, the longer it'll take for you to repair in field.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. That's something I've asked before. Like, I do feel the repair time is a lot. As someone who mains tanks, even I can admit, repair cranes are very quick at the moment. We just
haven't changed it because it's kind of like, it's the way the repairing works right now is kind of odd. It's based on health.
Yeah.
And so to change the value of how long it takes to repair it is kind of tricky. It's not just one value. It's a little bit trickier than that.
Fair enough. K9 asks, will passengers be able to shoot out half tracks? I assume similar to the zombie mode that we saw.
Probably not.
Okay.
That was only for the Halloween mode, and unfortunately, it works with one vehicle. But once you have five, 6 vehicles doing it, it's gonna start playing up. Even when we were using it during the Halloween thing, which was only a couple of weeks in the works, right? But regardless, a system like that is very taxing on the network, which means that servers will struggle more than they already are. So probably not. They also really don't serve because you can't really stand up. The seats were kind of like they were made as like player seats. The same way you sit down. Because the system how it works now, you can't really stand up, and I doubt we'll change that just because it's such a minute feature that doesn't really serve all that much purpose,
Fair.
other than just wanting to get really quickly shot, because you will die very quickly. I think people are overestimating how effective that really is.
Yeah.
It only works because you're fighting against zombies who don't have any guns to shoot at. But I guarantee you, had they had MP4s, you would have been dead, like at a moment's notice.
I can't remember who asked this, but I saw it flash by quickly, and it's with the vehicle overhaul, will you be able to kill people if you run them over?
We haven't talked about that yet, so I really don't know.
Fair. Someone's asking, I don't do mortars, so I ain't got a question about. I don't know about this, but they're asking, can it be changed or an option so they can use WSND to move the mortars?
Can't they already? I believe that it already kind of moves the mortar. I know what they mean. They want to have it kind of like the same as how tanks work with the turrets. Maybe at some point we'll change it, but right now it seems like a bit of a very niche issue, because the mortar works fine. It's just, I think that's just more of a preference thing than anything else.
A question from F40. Will some vehicle components, such as the gun breech, be unable to be repaired with a wrench?
I think what we kind of sort of talked about was you can repair them to a certain point, and then you'll need to go back to your main base to repair them fully.
Okay.
But as to the extent of what that means for the crew is, still a little early to say.
Okay. Callum asks, any chance we'll see some more deployables for the Logi teams?
More deployables. Does that mean fortification?
I assume, yeah, fortifications, guns, obstacles, whatever Logi can build.
We're probably going to do some more defensive structures at some point that are a little bit more durable, like probably a little bit more harder bunkers, or something a little bit more, something that can resist artillery a little bit more than they can now. But I mean, we already have a lot of assets already that you can build. Making more is just, it asks for a variety, but it also needs to serve a function. So we're not just going to add them just to add them.
Yeah. Okay.
As for more AT guns, possibly. Maybe we'll add some more. I think at one point we want to add the equivalent of like a flak or something to the British and American faction, like the Polston gun or something. Maybe the chopper, the meat chopper, the quad 50 cal placement.
Ooh, I know that. That's in movies and stuff. I know that.
It could be placed in half tracks. It could be towed on a trailer. It could be placed on the ground. It's a very lot of.
That sounds amazing. Last question for chat for time being. Then it's Asrico TV is asking, when the armor overhaul comes out, will things like trees, can you shoot through them, and fences and stuff with tanks, or will they still block the round?
Well, as we said, the round will currently how it works. Just to understand it, when you hit something, the shell stops to exist. When you hit a tank and it bounces, surprise and spoiler alert, the shell doesn't exist anymore. The shell gets replaced by an effect that's not actually real. It's not a real round. You just see an effect going in a random direction. So it's all Hollywood magic. But in a new system, that'll change. That the shell won't disappear. It won't cease to exist in the world. Meaning that you could, if in theory, shoot through multiple buildings with a tank round. It'll go until the shell either breaks or it doesn't have enough velocity to continue. It'll keep going. Like if you shoot a solid AP shot from a Firefly into a building, it'll go through multiple buildings before it'll stop. But don't expect to hit anything because the shell is going to be
fly
bouncing all over the place. It's gonna change directions to the right or the left, and it's gonna likely end up somewhere, who knows where.
Yeah. That's my last question for chat for time being, then we'll go back to mine. Chat, if I didn't answer your question, likelihood it's already been asked, so go back in the VOD or watch the video later, or I just missed it and you can get a chance to ask it again later. So something that was added quite recently at the end of the match was some more player stats, so time on objective, most efficient in combat. Will we see that expanded in the future in any way, be it through personal stats or just more accolades at the end of the game?
Yeah, so possibly. We may expand on the victory. I am assuming we mean a victory screen.
Yes.
But yeah, we might expand on it later down the line, but don't expect to see any sort of like persistent stat tracking. Like you can go out the game and keep track of your stats, or this is just not technically possible due to the data being stored on like individual servers rather than like a central server. In order for you to track a personal stat, it needs to send that stuff to us, to a central server that we control, so that we can display it for you. But since we don't have that and we don't intend to include that, it'll be server specific stats only. Some servers have gone out of their way to make like their own dedicated like stat tracker, like persistent stat trackers for their specific servers. I know some did it. I know they've done it back in squad as well. So it is very possible to take the stats that the server on the server side of if you have a community, it's very possible to take that data and make like a persistent like keep track of people's scores and their kill and death ratios.
Yeah,
all that.
I believe
that is fully possible. I've seen it multiple times, and I've seen others do it.
Yeah, I think it was recently, I could be wrong, I think First AL did a competition for the medic who got the most revives in a week or something like that on their server, so... Okay, cool. Moving on to something we mentioned briefly earlier, it's the competitive scene. So the EU Season 2 ladder is wrapping up. There's just 2 games left to play for the 3rd place. We saw the ladder from Season 1 to Season 2 grow quite a lot. There's a more garnered interest in it. Going into Season 3, depending when and how that will happen, is Periscope, looking at the competitive scene? Are they willing to get behind it or, get involved in some case?
Yeah, we were actually watching the Season 2 finals quite intensely, and it was a pretty good match. I'm not gonna lie. We have long wanted to support the competitor side of the community, and we've even tried to get in on it ourselves with post-Scriptum Nation Cruise, which was, I think it was 3 versus 3 tank combat. And so we've tried even ourselves to get through with it, but priorities caused us to kind of fall through with this idea initially. So for season 3, we're kind of talking with the officials about helping out and trying to get more views and more acknowledgement about the tournament. As far as endorsing it, we're obviously we obviously have to be very careful about saying this is our tournament. It's always going to be a community tournament. The less we are interfering with it, the better for all parties in terms of who runs it. But definitely, we'd love to help out and be able to throw up posts and announcements and possibly do some form of keys or rewards or something. That's something we'll have to talk with the officials and then talk internally about. But it is something we've discussed.
Fair. Rhett's asking chat, I saw him say PS Dev Squad when, and that's literally one of my next questions, is saying when are Periscope going to put a team together and challenge the community?
The community, by community, I mean, do you mean the...
I mean me, to prove that I'm the best tanker. To prove I'm the best.
Well, we don't have enough developers to fill up an entire team. So I mean, depends. Are we allowed to use the devs then?
I mean, you could have a
to make up for the lack of players.
Yeah, you could ask the devs and get a clan to come help you, and we can get a clan.
But then it's not a dev squad, is it? Then it's devs and co.
Devs and Co. Then we'll say Devs and Co. versus I
Awesome.
don't know, Cole FR, who were the recent winners, or me.
Again, we'd love to take them on with like with 10 guys or whatever, including our QA team. The condition that we get to use dev stems.
Fair. We'll have to come up with something for it. We'll have to come up with something. So everyone's been asking, and it's a question that I've held off toward the end. It's when am I going to get a hoodie?
You or the chat?
Me.
How am I not surprised you asked this? In seriousness, anyone can really make and get their own hoodies if they really want to. I mean, we don't mind anyone using our post-scriptum artwork to make hoodies. Unfortunately, these hoodies that we have are very expensive. They are several €100 a piece. They're not just, it's not just print. It's embroidered. It's a lot of work to make these hoodies, and we've only had these a couple of times, even internally.
Fair.
So I mean, if you really want a hoodie, you can always just make your own hoodie. There's nothing stopping you.
Looking at you, Carl.
We don't mind
my thumbnail
anyone making hoodies.
Fair. Aside from the hoodies, then, has it ever crossed the mind of Periscope to set up some small merch store where you, I don't know, sell stickers or mugs or something just to bring in some extra revenue?
We talked about it, but we're not kind of sure if this will be able to financially support itself. The problem with making a merch store is that there needs to be a constant demand and supply. Right? There needs to be people want to buy it. Otherwise, it's just running up costs, because it costs money to make hoodies. It costs money to ship the hoodies and have someone do it on your behalf if we're not doing it ourselves. So if there isn't a consistent demand for it, you're essentially just losing money. Which is, I guess, why we've not really committed to doing a merch store.
Okay.
Maybe one day we'll change our mind and we'll do some small scale merch store or something. But for now,
it's only fans.
It's not really worth it.
My last question then from me before I open up the chat again, and it's, what advice would you give anyone new to the game or looking to pick up the game? What advice would you give to them? Well,
Postscriptum is a game all about communication and teamwork. If you don't communicate, you won't get your money's worth out of the game. If you don't work with a team, you won't get your money worth out of the game. You will wander around bored until you get shot, and rinse and repeat until you eventually, inevitably, refund the game, or you don't want to play it anymore because it's terrible. And there are people out there who say, "Oh yeah, but it's only I don't have anyone to play with it." Postscriptum, it's always fun to have someone to play with, but to really get the experience and the pleasure out of the game, you really want to play it alone, because you get to meet new people that you've never met before, and for that one match, you guys need to be best friends, and everything needs to work like clockwork. Otherwise, everything falls apart. And that's when you communicate, you not only get a different experience, but you meet the people you otherwise would have ignored in any other game. Like if you play any other games, like say in Insurgency, half the game is people talking, half the game is the people not talking, and if you don't talk, you kind of lose out of the experience. But for anyone starting out, I would recommend starting in the Infantry. It's a good place to get to grip with the game, understanding all the fundamental mechanics of the game. Because there is a steep learning curve in the game, and that's obviously an intentional game design. Half of the reward is learning and getting good at the game. It's kind of like the same reason why people play, DCS, the simulator is.
Yeah.
Half of the fun in the game is learning and getting good at it. So yeah, if you don't communicate in a game like Postscriptum and you don't work together, and Postscriptum is a very challenging game for people who are, especially introverts, like people who don't like talk to people, or people who are afraid of talking. But it's actually a really, really good way of getting to grips with, especially if you're shy, or if you're not fond of talking to random people. It's a great place to get comfortable with the idea of talking to random people, and do it in an environment that you can control. That's the best part. This is an environment you control. Nobody controls you. If you don't want to talk to someone, or if there's a particular person you don't want to talk to, you can just not talk to them, or you could or you could go somewhere else. There's plenty of servers to play on, right? So
Yeah.
I think communication and teamwork is where it's at. And if you don't do those two things, you're not getting your money's worth. You could play any other tactical shooter that doesn't offer all that much communication. You find the same experience.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
it's kind of like a niche.
Yeah, that's fair, that's fair. Well, that is my last question. So again, I'll open it up to chat now. So chat, throw your questions in. This will be your last chance to get questions in. Dorius Prime has been asking 3 armor sections for 3 tanks in the future. That's one of his questions.
Yeah, that's one of those things that are on the condition that we increase the player count inevitably. Because right now, if you take away, even an AQ section, if you take away 3 players or whatever, you're not filling up enough squads. Currently, the game design is made in such a way that you can have all your armored squads filled up, all your logi sections filled up. You can have one commander, and then you can have all the infantry sections filled up of the rest of the guys. It's a perfect. It perfectly rounds out the player count.
Fair. F40 asks, will we be able to shoot down planes with the AA guns?
No.
Okay. That's a quick one.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why it is not possible. First of all, the airplanes are, again, surprisingly, they're fake. They're on rails.
They're not
they
real.
don't actually fly per se. There's just you can't see it, but we can actually turn on like a debug within the editor and within the game, where we can see the path that the plane is going to take when it comes in. It takes like a static path. It'll always fly the same path.
Yeah.
You can rotate that path around, but
I mean, there's multiple clans who you can spawn the planes in, can't you? And you can fly them at low ground and stuff, and do wacky things with them. So yeah, you can tell they're not real when you spawn them in and stuff. But
yeah, because on maps like Denon, they if you put them too low, they sometimes fly through the level. That's kind of fun. So yeah, they're not real. They don't exist. They don't have physics. They don't collide with anything. So even if you get hit by it, you're not gonna collide with it. It's not gonna do anything. So
Merv asks, hang on, his question disappeared. There it is. Can we get contour lines and altitude information on the maps or map tools?
Probably not. The big reason for that is simply the way that our map, the way we design each and every one of our levels and each and every one of our maps. All of our maps, keep in mind, are made by hand. They're not automatic. We make them by hand. Someone sits down and adds each and every building by hand. It's painstaking work.
I think you've got a VOD on that, haven't you? I can't remember who did it.
Yeah, we have a VOD on how we make the levels, and we can even in our community drive you can find a copy of 1 or 2 of our official PSD files for the layers, and they're actually just we've just taken an image of the map, and just kind of painted over it with lines.
Yeah,
and that's it's painstaking work. There's several hours of work in there. So adding contour lines would require us to have, height maps to where we can actually add that like almost automatically, but that's not really gonna happen. I doubt it.
Fair. Veli Selly, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, asks, will there be an upgrade option for emplacement? So from machine gun, for example, you can upgrade it to put sandbags around it. He's wondering if you can do the same for flaks and 88s in the future.
Don't really know what you would upgrade the flak 88 with. Maybe like a gun shield. I don't know.
Maybe just sandbags.
I don't really know what you would want to put. Because you don't want to restrict the line of fire of the flank gun, for example, and because those guns don't really have a quote unquote a default firing direction.
There you are.
Well, they do, but that may not be the same direction you want to fire in. So they kind of, unlike like pack guns and machine guns, they don't have an arc of fire. They can turn 360 degrees, so it's kind of hard to add a sensible cover to them. Add a suppressor. I want to suppress 88. I'm not gonna lie. I want to suppress 88.
A suppressor for an 88. Wow, yeah.
The Delilah.
I mean,
would that not be like the German version of making like the Delilah carbine? It's like they have to make everything bigger.
I mean, the SDK is out. Someone could surely mod a suppressed 88. Why not?
I want to see that. If someone makes a suppressed 88, I want to see that. I want to just stand at a distance and just hear and nothing else. That would be fucking fantastic. I would love that.
Someone asked about the shell physics video. There's going to be a dev post, I think Snazzy said, next week where it explains it more. So
yeah, likely next week or the week after. We're gonna do a dev blog soon about it.
Yeah.
Obviously now we kind of given away the stuff, but there's no audio here. So, or is there? Have you been playing with audio this entire time?
I have. It's on volume 2, and I can't put it like any lower, so I'll just pause it for time being.
That's gotta be really annoying at some point.
True. Well, I'm drinking, so it's fine. I don't hear it anymore. Mahrik asks, the territorial control. I assume he means the game mode. You spoke briefly about it for Chapter 4. Can you just go over it again for people coming in late, maybe?
Well, territorial control is it's a squad game mode, just like RAS is. And initially, we kind of just want to port over like territorial control as it was, but we've kind of since then we've kind of decided that yeah, if we're gonna do territorial control, we're gonna do it our way. We're gonna do it a little bit differently. So I can't say too much on it because it's kind of like one of those game modes we're not entirely sure what we really want with yet. But yeah.
Fair. And I think we're running out. I'll give chat 2 more minutes to post any more questions. They won't, because I accidentally closed chat, so I lost half the questions. So I'm sorry, chat. Throw up your question. I'm going to give you an extra 2 minutes. Will you lighten the load of the rifleman or add variations to the kit? That is one thing. Currently stuck with morphine bandages, sandbags, shovels, camera, ammo crate, and knife. I'm not quite sure the question. Maybe more guns? Pick different variations of guns.
One thing we want to do is kind of overhaul the role selection menu to allow a little bit more variety in kits. Right now, in order to select a kit, it has two different line
Thank
items.
You, chat. I see your questions now.
On the main menu or on the menu there, you have like, for example, with the rifleman for the French, you have 2 versions of the rifleman, which is essentially like the same name over and over again.
Yeah.
We would like for it to just be one name, and then you'd have like an additional menu where you can select the specific loadout, which could open up for a little bit more diverse loadout types. So you wouldn't. That's the big problem of why we haven't added, for example, multiple different roles for multiple kits. Like for example, the squad leaders, why some of them don't have like the Car 98 option or whatever. Or why some kits don't have the specific options in the. It's simply because the system as it stands now is kind of difficult to, because every time we want to make a new role, we have to make an entirely new blueprint for it, and that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it'll stack on the list, so you'll just have an infinitely bigger list of different kits, and they'll all be named the same ever so slightly, and it's not very intuitive at all. So at some point we want to move that over to its own little menu where you can select, like, for example, a squad leader. You'll just select like the squad leader kit, and then you'll select in the next menu what type of weapon.
There you go, Maury. I hope that answered your question, Maury.
Specialty kit that one is using specifically.
Fair. Mr. Yellow asks, will you be able to cook grenades? Will that be a thing?
I mean, realistically, you should, because, well, realistically, your grenade, especially the German grenade, they shouldn't cook at all. They should. They should just start cooking the moment you start pulling on the handle. You shouldn't be able to, pull out the pin and then just hold onto it.
Yeah.
So possibly at some point we'll introduce some form of, if you pull the stick on the, if you pull the safety on the stick grenade and you just hold on to it, you're gonna blow up.
Fair. Fred asks, will the AT infantry meta change with the armor overhaul? I think we already answered that.
It depends on what I mean, fundamentally it will change, because it'll be a lot more dynamic. Getting hit by something is going to have a lot more drastic effect than currently has.
Piano Man asks, will the Sherman get a stabilizer? I don't know if that's historically accurate, so I'll leave that to you, Snazzy.
Technically it is. That the 75 Sherman as well as the 76 Sherman had a gyroscopic stabilizer, which worked at a certain speed. I can't remember what the speed is, but it worked below a certain speed, and it helped maintain the gun. It was brutally efficient, actually,
There.
and quite revolutionary for its time. So very likely yes, but
There you go.
it hasn't been done yet. So, but
It's in the
likely
pipeline.
you'll see it. Yeah, it's likely to come at some point.
I've seen this asked in several ways, and people are asking, can a commander change his height when he's out of the hatch? So can he lower his head down a little bit? And the same with people who are crouching, kind of like the Escape from Tarkov system. I assume people are talking about where you can like adjust your height.
Yeah, I think we'll be introducing, or we'll be looking at introducing different view out modes. You'll be able to view out at different levels of different level of exposure. With full exposure, ideally we'd be able to fire sidearm. But again,
Pinio.
it's one of those things that's still not been done yet, and it's still up in the pipeline somewhere.
Pinio. Okay. Fair. I think. Oh, Menu asks, what was the point of creating the recruit for the French army? I think that's one of the infantry roles, right? So you got multiple infantry.
It's a default role. So when you leave a squad, or when you leave a section, if you for whatever reason lose your default specialty kit or whatever, that's the kit that it always gonna fall back to. It's always gonna fall back to like a default class. And instead of it being a rifleman, which is more advantageous, the recruit kit is essentially just like a worse version of the rifleman kit with no special stuff in it.
Fair.
The sandbags or ammo crates or whatever. So it's like a fallback kit. That's all it is. Again, the only reason why it's shown in the menu is because of how the menu system works. Ideally, you shouldn't even see the recruit role at all unless you don't have any squads.
Okay, that's fair. I think there's one last about rallies. Is there any plans to be able to destroy rallies without explosives?
Yeah, I think we've talked about destroying them with a shovel or something, or going up to pressing and holding F or something like that. Because destroying with them explosives kind of seems like a bit of a silly thing when you want to sneak around or be quiet.
Fair. I think that was the last question, Snazzy. So I'm going to pause the questions there, chat. I will do the last 2 giveaways in a few minutes. Snazzy, I've kept you longer than I promised I would. It's almost been 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you joining me, my dude, and I hope we can do this again in the future. And yeah, have you got any last leaks you can give us? Come on, give us something juicy. And
I don't really. There is actually another tank coming for Chapter 4. It is a German tank, but I'm not going to tell I'm not going to tell you what tank it is. I'm going to leave that up to be a mystery.
Fair.
So you can get to think about what we might add. German.
New German tank.
I say a singular tank. We're not adding multiple, not for now. Anyway. So you can get to let your mind wrap around about what could possibly be Hetzer.
So a Battle of the Bulge 1944 German tank. That's what you're saying.
What would we do? A Bob sample?
what we're getting the Bob sample? Oh man, yes.
No.
You heard it, chat. Bob sample. Here it comes. Boys.
Bob sample. Ah, man, that could be a lot of fun. But no. But yeah, I'll let people think about what that might entail. What that could be.
Fair. Well,
so yeah,
Snazzy, I appreciate you joining me, my guy. I'll let you get off. I hope we can do this again in the future. I hope chat's enjoyed it as well, getting their questions answered.
Yeah, maybe next time we can. Next time I'll bring the CEO along. We can join in on the chat and
100%.
We can have a talk.
Please do. Well, again, I appreciate it, Snazzy. I hope you have a great weekend, my dude. I'm sure there's going to be people sending you clips now and nagging you on Discord. So good luck with that.
Absolutely, but that will be nothing new and nothing out of the ordinary.
Fair. Well, I'll let you get on with your data, man, because I need to do these giveaways now, and people are going to shout rigged at me. So I won't let you sit around for that for the next 10 minutes. So you take care, man, and I'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Chat. hang on, I need to hide this before nothing else gets leaked. I don't want you guys seeing anything else. Chat, I'm gonna do the last 2 giveaways now. So if you're hanging in chat, I hope you enjoyed the interview. This is my first time doing a big interview like this. So it was kind of like a little bit, you know, I hope. I tried to answer as many of your questions as I could.